Hi everyone, welcome back to Quilting Confections for your Friday update. My name is Heather, and today I'd like to talk about our Easter basket kits that we have available. First off, we have the sample here is made with a spring flower fabric. We have a kit with bunnies, and we have a kit for the Marvel fans with Spider-Man fabric in it. So we have three different to choose from. So I would suggest that if you order these online, to in the notes section to just indicate which fabric preference you have. And if you would like something different, it's an option that we could put together a kit with some different fabrics as well. We still have some Easter bundles available in the fat quarters. You are getting 4 fat quarters in here for about the price of 3, and that's still a good deal available to you. And so today I'd like to go through a couple of the steps in putting together the basket that I think there's a couple of tricky parts that you maybe have not come across before. So I'm just going to show you the steps to get through that. We'll be right back. Okay, so the first thing that I wanted to show you is how to cover the handle for the basket. So when you start off with the webbing, it's kind of pliable. So in order to make it a little more rigid so that the handle stands upright, I'm going to cover it with fabric. And it's also a great way so that you can customize the webbing, because there's only a few colors that it comes in. And it's nice when your fabric matches your project for your handle. So first thing I'm going to do, and there's different ways to do it, I'm going to show you one method here. So before we went on camera, I pressed one edge in 1/4 of an inch on one side. And how I did that was simply using a manila folder and drew a line 1/4 of an inch from the edge. And then you place that on your ironing surface and fold over your fabric so it just touches that line, and you can press right on top of the card. So that's how I got my 1/4 inch pressed over on one edge. On the other edge, I'm going to baste it to the webbing. So I'll come over here, the machine. I'm going to change it to a basting stitch. And I'm just going to sew it really close to the edge. So once that's sewn on, you're going to take the other piece of fabric, or the other side, you're going to wrap it around, and then with that finished edge, you're going to press it over so that it covers your stitching line there. And now this is where I would use matching thread and top stitch right close to that edge. Oh, and I forgot to mention that it's a 1-inch webbing, so I started off with a 2 3/4 width of fabric to cover it. And so now I'll just put it under the machine and just top stitch. So I have my machine set about 3 1/2 for a nice top stitching. And I'm going to sew close to the fold. So now I have made kind of a wobbly stitching line. I'd be more careful if I wasn't on camera. And I'm just going to reach over, grab my scissors. So at this point, you're going to want to tuck in your edges. So I would fold down one side and then take the other side and fold it in, and then you're going to top stitch across that fold and do the same on the other side, which I didn't leave room for it, but you're just going to want to tuck in those edges and top stitch it down. And once you've done that, then you're going to run this strap through the machine and put several lines of stitching. On this handle, I did about 6 lines of stitching on this handle, and I think that just gives it a little more stability so that it stands up straight. And then what I did to attach it, I attached it on the outside of the basket, and I just sewed a box around that to secure it to the sides of the basket. So that's your handle. Okay, so another tricky part in the basket is attaching the bottom of the basket, the circle, to the sides of the basket. And I did it one method, and then Bonnie here showed me another way to do it. So I'll tell you first how I did it. I had my bottom quilted, I had my sides quilted and sewn together along the short edges to make the tube. And then I sewed the bottom to the sides, matching at the 1/4 inch part. I marked my the opposite points on four points on the circle, and just stitched it on. And then I attached the binding, and I sewed the binding onto the outside of the basket and brought it around to the bottom and hand stitched the folded edge of the binding onto the bottom of the basket. And this was using the bias strip. So there is a bias strip in the kit. And so Bonnie showed me this great way to do it, where you sew the binding on first. So I have a bottom here, and I started stitching on the bias strip. And another trick that she told me was to not press your binding in half. So I haven't pressed it in half like I normally do for binding. I've left it so it's kind of just loose there. So we're going to stitch it all the way around, and in this way you're able to finish the binding just like you do on a quilt. When I did this method, I had to do the tuck method. So there is a little flap here where I've tucked in. I could have hand stitched that closed a little bit, but in such a small area that would be the only way you could get them in. But this method is lovely because you can, when you get near the end, you have enough space. It's not attached to the sides of the basket, so you can finish that last bit of seam and join the ends together before you attach it to the basket. And so I'm just going to finish sewing this on right now. Okay, I've sewn the circle as far as possible in order to join the two ends of the binding strip. So because of the curve, I'm using a tape measure to measure that these two strips are overlapping each other by 2 1/4 inches, which is what I cut the binding strips to. So I have these overlapping at 2 1/4 inches. I have a line drawn here from the corner out to 2 1/2 inches down. So I have a diagonal line drawn there. And then I'm going to put these two ends together, right sides together, and stitch on that line. that stitched down. I'm going to trim my seam allowance off. And now I can finger press that seam open here. And now you can finish sewing that all the way around. So now the binding is sewn all the way around the circle, and at this point you're going to have this on the outside of the basket when you sew it to the tube of the sides of the basket. This will be on the outside. You can sew it now to the basket with the binding already attached. There's not going to be any tucking involved. And then once you've sewn it onto the sides, you're going to bring that binding around and just hand stitch it. So this time the hand stitching will be on the outside of the basket. So it's your choice. You can decide which method suits you the best. Both of them will work, and then you have your finished basket. So thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this project. It was kind of a fun one to put together, and you can find the kits for these baskets on our website, quiltingconfections.com, where you can also sign up for our email list. And don't forget to like us on Facebook and Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks a lot, everybody, and happy Easter.